My dad overdosed. My mom died from drug-complicated issues. My uncle overdosed in my garage when I was 19 while I was sleeping in the house. For 10 years of my life, I ran from reality. Both my parents left me at a young age. My dad went to prison. My mom just to the streets and a new boyfriend. And I was heartbroken, man. I had to do everything right just to get a second chance. I couldn't freaking make one mistake. I had to walk that line, man. And I made a decision in my jail cell that I was going to get sober and stay sober for the rest of my life. You have to learn how to talk about it freely without being judged, without being scared, without holding back. You have to be able to express your truth, man. And because in that is healing. Sobriety is a superpower, you guys. The moment you recognize this and commit to a life of sobriety, I guarantee you it will positively enhance and impact everything that you do going forward. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Michael Crane. You guys, today we're going to be talking about sobriety, how I got sober, why I got sober, and subsequently how it transformed my life for the better. So if you know somebody who's struggling in addiction, or maybe you have thought about getting sober in your life for whatever reason, this is going to be a valuable message. Please make sure to subscribe and share with anybody you know that wants to level up in their life. So I've been sober 12 years, you guys. Before that, I battled addiction for 10 years in my life. I come from a family who has a history of drug and alcohol abuse. My dad overdosed. My mom died from drug-complicated issues. My uncle overdosed in my garage when I was 19 while I was sleeping in the house. A lot of family members and friends that I know growing up lost their lives to their addiction. So for me, this is a very personal issue. And I would not be here today had I not been able to get sober. I was so close to dying so many times, being young and reckless and just out partying all night, drinking, then taking pills, and then someone hands you ecstasy and like, dude, I didn't care. It's like I had a death wish. I would do anything. I had no sense of like protecting myself, like longevity. I didn't care. I was living in the moment. I was wild and reckless. And there's a reason for that. And this is the first thing that I want to touch on. If you're somebody who struggles with addiction, and this might not just be addiction to drugs and alcohol, it might be food. A lot of people are addicted to food. It might be porn. I know a lot of guys that secretly are addicted to porn. Anybody that has something that they turn to as a recourse that over time is maladaptive, meaning over time it causes more harm than good, that's an addiction that needs to be addressed, right? And so a lot of people are addicted to their phones too. But for people that are more heavily plagued by addiction like I was, like you're using heavy amounts of drugs and alcohol, there's a reason for that. This is the first step, is figuring out why do you need to numb yourself and check out that frequently? Because eventually it becomes a pattern, and then your brain like really craves this thing because there's certain neurotransmitters and chemicals in your brain that are released that make you feel good, and forget about what? Forget about the reason why you're doing it, your problems, your life, your trauma. That's what I want to talk about first. For 10 years of my life, I ran from reality. Both my parents left me at a young age. My dad went to prison. My mom just to the streets and a new boyfriend. And I was heartbroken, man. And for 10 years, I never talked about it. I never acknowledged it. I didn't want anybody to bring it up. I stopped going to family functions. I stopped doing anything that I had done previously. I got a new group of friends who wouldn't ask me about it, and they were just getting high and drinking so I could just fit in with them. And so for 10 years, I stayed numb and checked out. When I got to prison, I realized that I was in a life or death set of circumstances, and I had to do everything and anything in my power to change. I had to do everything right just to get a second chance, right? I couldn't freaking make one mistake. I had to walk that line, man. And I made a decision in my jail cell that I was going to get sober and stay sober for the rest of my life. I knew that my life depended on it. And for some of us, we have to get to that moment where we're at rock bottom. And thank God I did. I know a lot of people that use maybe recreationally or habitually for their entire lives, and it just keeps them stuck as a shadow of the person they could have become. So thank God that I had those set of circumstances that really woke me up. And the first thing I realized, man, was like, I'm using drugs and alcohol for a reason. And I never stopped to actually just like dissect it and peel back the layers, man. And this is actually an exercise I do with clients that I work with who are battling addiction. I start helping them to peel back the layers and memories in their life so they understand, where does this come from? Why am I numbing myself? Why do I feel this need to always use something? And chances are it comes from some traumatic event or a series of events that scarred you. Whether it's your upbringing, like I went through with my parents, or maybe a really devastating breakup or divorce, loss of a child or a loved one, like there's usually a set of circumstances that led to us abusing substances. And sometimes it's just a series of mild things that just affected your sense of self-worth. Like I know a lot of people who were bullied as a kid. They didn't get girlfriends. They didn't hang out with the cool kids. They weren't good at sports, whatever. And there's this overwhelming feeling of like, I'm not good enough. And when somebody lacks self-worth, what do they want to do? They want to numb that feeling out because it's not a good way to feel about yourself, obviously. So the first step, though, is figuring out, why do I want to use drugs and alcohol? Where is this craving, this insatiable desire to check out and numb myself coming from? Once you can pinpoint that and kind of trace back, the memories and the experiences of life to start coming to these more pivotal, emotionally charged events, then you have to learn how to process it. You have to learn how to talk about it freely without being judged, without being scared, without holding back. You have to be able to express your truth, man. And because in that is healing, in that is acceptance. And, there's a number of ways you do this. Some people go to therapy. Other people hire life coaches. Some people just do it on their own, or a lot of people go to AA. The steps in AA, they walk you through this process. And I went to AA for many years. But what I found with AA and NA and therapy is they're limited. They're limited because they help you to get sober and kind of uncover the baggage and the reasons why you use drugs and alcohol in the first place, or why you abuse substances. But from there needs to be progression. You see, the thing is, I got sober, but I just didn't want to be Sean. I'm an alcoholic in recovery and I'm sober for the rest of my life. Like, you go to AA and you still identify as an addict. Dude, I'm not a fucking addict. I've been sober 12 years. I changed my programming. I eradicated my addiction. There's a big difference there. And when you go to therapists, they always want to dwell on and talk about the negative stuff, the trauma, the events, the people. Like, there has to come a point where you grow beyond that. You make an amends with the past, you heal, you accept what happened, you can no longer change it, but now you got to move forward towards something that's bigger and better that gets all your attention. When you have a goal or a vision or something that you want to change in your life beyond sobriety, that's what radically transforms you for the better, right? I fell in love with fitness. I fell in love with coaching. I wanted to be the best father, the best husband. I started creating this vision of what my life could be like because I was sober, right? Because I was educating myself, because I was working out. And I painted a picture that was completely different than what my life currently was at the moment. There has to be a progression. And this is one of the biggest things that I see missing in NA and AA and other group therapy sessions and all that shit. It's they don't have that progression. They don't have that thing to strive for, that vision, those goals. Because in the midst of that journey, pursuing those goals and those visions, you continue to evolve and transform. You see a lot of people get sober and then they just don't do anything else. They think that just being sober is enough, and thank God I'm sober. Yeah, that's great. That's your foundation. But let's learn new skills. Let's set bigger goals. Let's transform ourselves, man. And that's why, competitions and endurance training is so good. That's why going to the gym is so good. You can continue to see your body change over time. Reading books, developing skill sets. Don't settle in your job. Don't settle in your marriage. Life's about progression. And Tony Robbins said it perfectly. He said, progression is the key to fulfillment. The moment you stop growing, the moment you stop striving to be a better version of yourself, the moment you think you learned enough, you don't got to learn anymore, the moment that you think you got to that place that you were intended to be and you stop growing, you get complacent, that's the moment you start losing fulfillment. If you want to be fulfilled for the rest of your life, keep growing, keep learning, keep changing. That's why people, when they retire, dude, they end up dying. People that work until the day they die, they live longer. Statistics show this. So the message is, you guys, that for me, sobriety was a catalyst to change my entire life because it gave me a foundation. But I had to continue to build upon that foundation. Having faith in God and a higher power and a higher plan for me, sobriety and fitness, and then marriage and becoming a family man, those things changed my life radically. But it wasn't just one thing, right? It was a series of changes and choices over time. For me personally, without getting sober, I wouldn't be here. And a lot of you listening to this, you might not want to accept it or admit it, but you not being sober drastically limits your potential. The way you think, your energy, your productivity, how you show up for others, your influence, it's compromised when you're not clear-headed and sober. People who are sober have a connection to source that is more profound than people that are checking out. Even if you're just numbing yourself from time to time, I'm telling you, man, your thoughts aren't going to be as pure. Your energy is not going to be as pure. That depth inside of you, your truth, your purpose is not going to be as easy to tap into, and you will be a limited version of yourself. If we were meant to be altered, if we were meant to be checked out, you would have been born that way. The only reason people get altered and check out is because they don't know how to function or get the results or feel the way they want to feel without that thing. Imagine if you didn't need that thing and you could feel that way or operate that way or be that way without that substance. Imagine that person's development. Imagine that person's growth to get to that level. And imagine what that person can do in their life going forward, knowing they don't need a crutch or anything else to help them feel the way they want to feel. Sobriety is a superpower, you guys. The moment you recognize this and commit to a life of sobriety, I guarantee you it will positively enhance and impact everything that you do going forward.